Bill Maher kind of reminds me of that speech from The Godfather 3, right? Every time it seems like he's going to escape the liberal leftist bubble, they pull him back in with their strange ideology, right? His TDS always gets the better of him. And of course, this is going to be on full display in the clips I have to show you today from the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. But before we get to them, don't forget to like and share on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
They have the broader narrative that everyone knows how screwed up the government is, how much it wastes money. There's a lot of fraud. So they've got like this kind of inoculation, generally speaking. What's the opposition party doing?
Yeah.
You don't go full and, die on the hill of foreign aid, which I voted for foreign aid. Foreign aid's important. I sat on the Defense Committee. I know how important those aid programs are. But with all the stuff going on, you're going to amplify that they want to cut foreign aid. I just think that's a huge strategic mistake, because now you look like you're defending government spending, even when people in Youngstown, Ohio, don't have a meal, costs are up, can't buy eggs, XYZ.
Okay.
You're still shipping
You're talking
our
about
money abroad.
USAID, that was the big story last week. That's the first thing they went after. And this is the problem, is that you're talking about two guys who both have a mental problem. I would say, wait a second. In that they have no mechanism when they feel personally slighted, not to just go for utter revenge. I mean, there's a way to have done this that would have been smart and would have not looked cruel and just gleeful at this. USAID, I'm sure, does have corruption in it, as every agency does. But to go after that first, and we're talking about, yes, these are mostly not Americans who are getting the aid. But what you just said is interesting, because that's where the Democrats are going to have to draw lines. Rahm Emanuel said the same thing. David Axelrod said the same thing. This is not a hill this party should die on.
So let me just say real quickly, I know that they look insane sometimes, and for good reason. But that was a strategic move on their part, because they knew what the reaction was going to be from the Democrats. They knew the Democrats were going to light their hair on fire and go protest outside the building. They knew that. And so coming out of the inauguration, they're framing the argument around, look at these guys, how out of touch they are. They're defending foreign aid, and we're trying to stop waste and abuse and still do our economic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the problem for the Democrats is the only way to argue against all this is to say, no, we like the status quo. The government was working fine, which is not a winning position.
Not what the Americans are.
Nor is it true.
It's the same thing as, during the election when they were saying, well, the economy is great, the stock market is up, there's low unemployment, and meanwhile, people can't afford decent housing or health care or eggs.
No, it's not like he was, Musk said career Treasury officials are breaking the law every hour of every day by approving payments that are fraudulent or do not match the funding laws passed by Congress. Is that true? I don't know, because he says things that aren't true all the time and doesn't care.
Yeah.
Or retweets something that is plainly, easily, provably not true. So I don't know. But I do know this, because this comes from the Government Accountability Office. That's not the Trump administration. The federal government loses an estimated 233 to 521 billion annually to fraud. So when Trump the first thing he did was fired all the inspectors general. And I thought, well, that's not good. That's their job to watchdog stuff. But if you're losing $521 billion a year, how good are you watchdogging? You got to...
So here's Bill Maher being kind of reasonable, right? Aside from saying that Donald Trump and Elon Musk both have clear and obvious mental disorders, right? We're saying, yeah, we all know there's waste in government, right? But how much? And as is pointed out right at the end, yes, the Government Accountability Office says that between $250 and $500 billion is lost each year due to mispayments, mismanagement, etc., right? So is there something going on there? Most likely, which of course is why we need DOGE. But according to Bill Maher, they could have done it in a nicer way, in a way that made more sense. But as Tim Ryan actually made the good point there, yeah, we all knew exactly what the left was going to do, right? They're going to go out there and make a big seen that is completely unreasonable to the American people. And as is also pointed out, the only way to combat this apparently is to come out and say, yeah, we're on the side of wasteful government spending, right? Because either you're getting behind DOGE and you're saying, please look into this, please investigate this, find out what's going on, eliminate the fraud, right? Either you're saying that or you're saying that, yeah, the government is always right. And as is also pointed out there by the New York Times reporter, that's one of the big issues that people had with the Democrat Party and the government in general, right? We don't believe the lies you're spreading because everything has been proven to be completely false. And that's why we have this mandate to go in there and try to clean things up. But now let's take a look at Bill Maher and the panel being completely unreasonable.
So let me go to one more semi-related thing about the hill to die on. Here's my last one.
Okay.
Trans. Because Trump has gone way too far on this. He's at that place. This is what I always say, nobody can ever be in the middle.
No.
It always has to go from one pendulum swing to all the way to the other. So now we're back at there's only two sexes, which is ridiculous, although I'm glad I'm in one of the ones we're keeping. Since it's a valid. But is that a hill worth dying on?
No, you can't. I mean, you can't. And again, like, you can be for everyone having rights. You could be for people not getting bullied. You can approach these things in a compassionate way. But if you recognize that that's such a very small 1/10 of 1% of the population, and that's dominating the conversation, and you're not talking about economics and lunch bucket issues and pensions and wages and unions and all that good stuff, then you are defending 1/10 of one part of the population. Trump gets in, Republicans control the House and the Senate. You get someone who is cruel,
yeah,
and mean-spirited, and someone who didn't agree with the first part of what I said, protecting their rights, making sure they're not bullied, all of that stuff. You don't get any of that because you failed to make the strategic argument. And the question is, get people in office who are going to be compassionate towards your views and be inclusive and care about you, even if you may not agree with everything. They're not, a president should be saying, no trans kid should ever get bullied in the United States. That's bullshit, right? Yeah. But it doesn't mean you run a campaign on that.
I mean, I think the effort to, erase transgender people from out of existence, to deny that they exist and that they deserve rights the same as anyone else, that they should not be discriminated against. What's troubling about this is the idea that Donald Trump is taking a position that is to protect women. This is a sexual predator, and that he's supposedly protecting women and girls, that he is the one who is supposed to be in favor of, really evidence-based healthcare, in favor of science, in favor of gay rights, in favor of mental health care, in favor of protecting, different people who differ from him. All of that should have been.
He's a terrible messenger, but penises do not belong in women's prisons. He's not wrong about that. Penises do not belong in women's shelters.
I mean, this is one of those issues where it has become so ridiculously politicized and polarized that there's no room. And most Americans, I think, deserve credit. Most Americans are reasonable on this issue. And on the issue of biological boys, playing on girls' sports teams, or biological men being in women's prisons, most Americans in both parties agree.
So the fear-mongering from Bill Maher and the panel here is truly incredible. So let's start by saying this. No one is trying to take away the rights of any transgender individual, okay? They have the exact same rights and freedoms and privileges as every other person, every other citizen in America, okay? But Bill Maher, he's upset with Donald Trump taking the following positions. First, saying there are two genders in America, which clearly is true, scientifically as well, okay? Only two genders. And then second, what did Donald Trump do? He said, no more transgenders in the military, right? And the most interesting argument I've heard about this is that when you go through all the transition surgeries and medications, etc., you're not fit for duty. So at which point you become useless to the military, right? So that's a great reason not to have them there, right? Also along, of course, with the mental problems they all have, right? And then, of course, no men in women's sports, right? That's something Bill Maher actually agrees on. We'll touch on that again. And of course, not funding hospitals that actually end up doing transitions for young children, okay? If you're an adult, you go ahead and live whatever lifestyle you want. Just don't expect me to buy into your truth and your reality, all right? But at the very end, Bill Maher kind of brings it back and says, well, obviously, men don't belong in women's sports, in women's prisons, in women's locker rooms. Clearly, that's true. But everything else, oh, Donald Trump was completely crazy on. And that, of course, is what makes Bill Maher so frustrating, because he sees the truth in so many scenarios, but completely ignores it in others, right? They're just pulling him back in, as I said at the very beginning of this video. You see how I tied it in? So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.